Okay, and sorry again. It was a bit surprised with all these technical troubles. And now we can start. And let me say several words in Russian, because I'm afraid I am not ready speak it in English just now. Уважаемые коллеги,
dear colleagues, now I apologize in Russian for this whole mess and disorder. We will probably have to move the presentations around coffee break because we are really and truly running late, but I hope that we will be able to catch up. Well, we have the delay of 30 minutes as of now. But I'm happy to welcome all of us at the third International Conference on Conservation of Steppe Eagle, or Steppe Eagle Conservation Conference. We do have quite a lot of presentations before lunch, and then we have a round table in the afternoon to discuss some practical measures to better protect these various species. Well, I would like to say a couple of words about this. I thought I would say a couple of words about the steppe eagle, but I don't think I will be doing that because we don't have time for that. Maybe at the round table I will have a chance to sort of say my part and briefly talk about the steppe eagle. Well, now, Martin Horváth with his first presentation. On steppe eagle breeding population service in Turkey, that's the most relic, the most ancient maybe, the breeding population. So please come up here. English. Channel 2 for English.
Okay, can you hear me? Thank you very much for the possibility to present our preliminary results on the population surveys of steppe eagles in Turkey, which we have executed in the last 7 years with our Hungarian, Russian and Turkish colleagues. So the status of the species in Turkey was not clear from the available publications before the last years. For example, one of the most comprehensive summary of the status of birds in Turkey, which was published in 2008 by Kirvan and colleagues, showed that the breeding status is unclear in Turkey, and they only mentioned some breeding attempts from the 1960s till 1980. And there was a single breeding case which was accidentally found by our Hungarian colleagues during a birdwatching trip in 2003, and that was the whole available information on the exact breeding locations or status of the species. With the help of our Turkish colleagues, we had a look on the Trakush and eBird online databases, where there were 176 observations on the species, but after we made some analysis, we found that only 25 of them were from potential breeding habitats in the breeding season, and only 2 observations were presented with photos where the identity of the species and the age of the species could be identified. Both are from Konya region. From 2008 and 2013, and we also found some clear misidentifications with the Klanga species, both lesser and greater spotted eagles. Regarding the methods, we have done 5 excursions. by Hungarian teams together with Turkish, Russian and Austrian colleagues. It happened once a year since 2015. In 2 cases we did April surveys to search for active nests, and in 2 cases we did summer surveys to check breeding success and to tag birds. Regarding the participants, the first expedition where we found the first breeding sites was done together with the Russian Raptor Research and Conservation Network with Igor and Elvin and their colleagues. Later on, Burak Tatar and his team from the Turkish Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry helped and partially financed our work in the upcoming years. The most active fieldworker help we got from Cansu Özcan, who was funded by a small OSME project on the conservation of the species, and there was a big step forward in 2022 when a relatively large project of the Ministry of the Nature Resource Society of Turkey has been executed for the elaboration of species action plans in Turkey, and fortunately the single bird species which was selected was the Steppe Eagle. So the Steppe Eagle was the first species in Turkey for which a species action plan could be elaborated. Regarding the survey efforts, we have started our work in Turkey already in 2007, but we were mostly focusing on imperial eagle populations, more north. And from 2015, we started surveys on both species. We have in central Anatolia, we have covered a quite large proportion of the areas, and our tracks exceed 60,000 kilometers just in Turkey. If we put it on a map, we can see that more or less these 50 to 50 kilometer UTM squares have been visited more regularly, out of which in these southern grid cells where we found steppe eagles. About the results, you can see that we could get a preliminary map on the distribution of these 2 species. We can see that they are not really overlapping. The more forested regions, forest steppe type habitats are inhabited by the imperial eagles in a relatively large numbers. We are sure that several hundreds of breeding pairs can be found. We managed to locate more than 100 nest sites during the surveys, so it's really a good population is there. And on the southern part, we found a few steppe eagles. So the nesting habitats, I put some slides just to imagine. These are the Seyfegölü steppe area, which is a really nice protected steppe landscape. Of course, it is also threatened by drying and by channels, and also by intensification of agriculture from the sides. The other very important breeding habitat are the Tuzgölü steppes, which are located on the shore of the Salt Lake. Regarding the nesting sites, we found basically all type of nesting habits which was published from the large eastern population, so bushes, small trees, stone piles, small cliffs, rocks, but even on the ground we found nests. The nearest neighbor distance between nesting sites varied largely between 3 to 15 kilometers. The average was around 6 kilometers. Altogether, we managed to locate 38 nests during the surveys. Most of them were located on a special bush species, and 21 of them were with active breeding attempts. The others were just old nests or rudimentary nest bases. We put all of our data into a database. Of course, you can see that the previous surveys could visit only a part of the potential habitats, and the 2022 survey, thanks to this Species Action Plan project, was the most comprehensive, where we visited practically all previously known territories. If you look on the number of known pairs, we can see with the red and yellow colors that seems to be an increasing population if we just look at on the positive data. But of course it is not the case, because our surveys had a very low coverage comparing to the potential habitats. But if we have a look on the proved empty breeding territories, we could see an opposite trend. Of course it's also not proved anyhow yet. But it is true that several territories which were previously occupied became empty in spite of the focused research during this few years of period. We have some data on the breeding success on very small sample sizes, of course, especially with the clutches with eggs. Of course, we are not visiting the clutches to disturb the eagles away, but because of the breeding habits of the species, it happened 6 times that the birds flew away from a very close distance. So in this time we controlled the clutch size, and we found that most commonly 3 eggs were in the clutches, and they were 2 in average. Later we controlled the clutches in late June, usually for breeding success, and we found that some of the breeding attempts were failed, but in average there were 1.65 chick per breeding pair in the clutches, which seems to be normal. And we even have lower or less proved data on the fledging success. But there were several cases of known chick mortality before they could fledge, and even more worrying that in 2 or 3 cases we found dead fledglings after they left the nest, and we also did satellite tracking, and also some of the satellite track juveniles died just within a very short period of after fledging. So if we make a rough estimate based on this very limited data, we can see that these are the figures for the breeding success in this tiny population. Of course, the number of fledglings may be even less. Regarding the diet, we didn't do any detailed survey, but it became clear that just like all other significant populations of the species, this Anatolian population is also depending on a particular rodent species, which is the Anatolian ground squirrel. All of the known breeding grounds had a very healthy population of this rodent species. And of course it means that the conservation of these 2 species must be linked in the future. One interesting case which we found in 2012 was when a female imperial eagle was found to be paired with a male steppe eagle. At least from a morphological point of view, it looked like mostly a steppe eagle. And based on analysis of photographs and genetic analysis which was done together with Ankara University, we found that the female was a pure imperial eagle, but the male had already hybrid characters in the genetics. So it was a presumed F1 hybrid of an imperial eagle and a steppe eagle, where the female, so the mother was a steppe eagle. And the father was an imperial eagle, and which is even more surprising that they could breed successfully. In several years, they had 2 chicks, which is interesting that the chicks were at least F2 hybrids. So it means that they can integrate into the population, and they had some quite weird characteristics like feathers on the toes, and even one of the chicks had 5 toes. And of course their plumage characteristics was also very weird. We did some satellite tracking with in the cooperation with the ministry, Turkish ministry. We tagged 6 steppe eagles and 2 hybrid chicks. And later on the ministry also continued the tagging and tagged some more steppe eagles. The first results were already quite interesting, which means that we also tagged imperial eagles, which were proved to be resident in the Anatolian parts, so they didn't left Turkey at all. but the steppe eagles were migratory as we expected, and they migrated to the Sahel region of Africa, and which was even interesting that although only 1/4 of the chicks were genetically steppe eagles, they were also migratory, although they started the migration later, and also one of the chicks made a mistake and went into the middle of the Sahara and died there, but the other did both autumn and spring migration successfully and wintered in the same habitats where other steppe eagles. If you compare it with the eastern populations, which was published by Igor Karjakin and his co-authors, we can see that this part of the Sahel is west of the area which is used by the rest of the species population. So it seems that the Turkish population has a different wintering area comparing to the other populations. There is only a marginal overlap in eastern part of the Sahel. So the conclusions. Maybe the species is on the brink of extinction. We cannot say it for sure based on this very few research, but you could see that we spent quite a significant amount of time in the field, and our personal feelings is that the species is really in a very bad condition. There are very significant threats, of course, throughout the distribution area. Electrocution is a big issue. Shooting also happens, which we detected with imperial eagles, not with steppe eagles. Infrastructural development is extremely quick. From year to year, we observe the destruction of habitats, and the intensification of agriculture is also a very emerging issue. They are applying the steppes, overgraze some grasslands, and the irrigation system has a double threat. Beside the significant disturbance and the general effects of irrigation, they are bringing power lines to the middle of the fields for the pumps, so it is also causing electrocution indirectly. So we have very limited data, and also the local capacities are limited, although hopefully and fortunately increasing during the last year. So which is really important is to network among the organizations who started to work with the species and build their capacities. The National Action Plan was prepared, as I mentioned, last year. Hopefully there will be capacity for its implementation and revision soon, because definitely this is just the first step, because we have very limited information. This was the project which I mentioned. You could see the poster of Ilker and his colleagues about the Species Action Plan, which was prepared in the frame of this project. It was elaborated in the frame of a workshop last October in Konya. It's just a photo about the electrocution. There could be many photos of the dangerous power line systems. We didn't do any particular surveys, but it is planned because it would be really necessary. And I would like to thank all the colleagues who participated in these field surveys. So thank you.
Very interesting presentation, and we have time for probably one question or maybe two, but short. Please.
Knowledge of Turkey, I'm a bit surprised of the distribution being only around the Tuzla Gulu rather than more to the east as well, because it's much wetter perhaps, but it's a steppe extend to the east, while the population is only located around Tuzgulu pretty much. Any explanation on that?
Yes, I have thoughts. We have visited only this area yet. This is so. We will see.
Okay.